Wouldn't it be nice if just once, when Donald Trump told lies about tariffs or the economy or jobs numbers or even his plan to bring peace to Gaza or Ukraine, that a solitary journalist might stand up and say, "No, sir, that is not true"?
We're going to get some back. We're going to get some switched. There'll be some swapping of territories.
You see, in the 5 months since Trump and Volodymyr Zelensky's Oval Office meeting back in February, an encounter that ended with the Ukrainian president being ejected from the White House, officials in Kiev have been working to repair the political fallout, and with guidance from European allies, Zelensky adjusted his approach towards the Trump regime, and for a time it appeared to be paying off. We managed to reset communications to find a new language to work with Trump, a senior official in Kiev said just last week. Hopefully they didn't go as far as many of the business leaders in America, like Apple's Tim Cook, who showed up with a 24-carat gold gift for Donald Trump. One of the most embarrassing things to see a CEO of one of the world's most profitable American companies bow down to the supreme leader and not stand up to fascism.
Congratulations,
Thank you
Mr.
very
President.
much. It's
Thank you so
fantastic.
much.
The great people of Kentucky. You're going to find it a great place to do business, too.
Well, Trump's tone towards Moscow also seemed to be shifting in recent weeks. He described Russia's strikes on Ukrainian cities as disgusting and gave Putin a deadline of last Friday to end the war or face new sanctions. Well, that apparent progress was upended on Wednesday when U.S. envoy, real estate mogul Steve Witkoff, was sent by Trump to Moscow. After a 3-hour meeting, Putin offered no major concessions, but was invited to Alaska for direct talks with Trump instead of being hit with the promised sanctions. You see, every time Donald Trump threatens Vladimir Putin indirectly, nothing changes. Why? Because Putin is calling the shots. The proposed summit to discuss a possible Ukraine peace agreement is exactly the sort of power negotiation that Putin has wanted. It would be his first U.S. visit since 2007, apart from appearances at the United Nations. Alaska is just a few miles from Russia, super close for Putin to travel to, and is, of course, U.S. territory. Nowhere near Ukraine, nowhere near the front line, and doesn't appear to involve the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Details of the meeting in Alaska remain murky, with confusion surrounding the announcement. Governments in Kiev, across Europe, and even within Trump's own team have been trying to determine what was actually agreed upon in Moscow. Initial White House statements indicated a bilateral Trump-Putin meeting following a 3-way session, including Zelensky. But Putin quickly denied this, saying, "We are still far from creating the conditions for such a meeting." A Russian aide insisted that no agreement for a trilateral meeting had been made. And when asked by reporters this last week what Donald Trump had planned to bring peace to Ukraine, he said, "An exchange of territories. Giving a little, taking a little."
Well, you're looking at territory that's been fought over for 3.5 years with, a lot of Russians have died, a lot of Ukrainians have died. So we're looking at that, but we're actually looking to get some back and some swapping. It's complicated. It's actually nothing easy. It's very complicated, but we're going to get some back. We're going to get some switched. There'll be some swapping of territories to the betterment of both.
Anybody who's been following this story arc will see that Vladimir Putin always has the upper hand in his dealings with Donald Trump. Trump puts Putin on a pedestal. He wants to be an authoritarian dictator like him, and he has no respect for Volodymyr Zelensky, who is a mere actor. Some US officials suggested Zelensky might be invited anyway, and German Chancellor Friedrich Merz said on Sunday he hopes and assumes Ukraine's president will attend. However, a senior White House figure said that while Trump is open to a 3-way meeting, his focus remains on the bilateral session that Putin requested. You see, for Kiev, the format of the talks is troubling, but so is the substance of the plan reportedly presented by Putin. According to accounts relayed through US channels to European capitals, Ukraine would be expected to withdraw from parts of Donetsk and Luhansk it still holds, including the heavily fortified Kramatorsk. In return, Russia would freeze the front lines elsewhere. You see, it's pretty clear to anybody who has now realized that Donald Trump doesn't have any skills apart from low-budget renovations, that he doesn't really understand international diplomacy. He's only just worked out that Vladimir Putin might have been playing him all along, whilst the rest of the world looked on and has been saying for over a decade that the Kremlin has been playing you all along.
Именно патриотический настрой граждан.
Trump's plan is basically to give in to Putin, and that's the end of it. Remember, Vladimir Putin wants to extend his reach, his Soviet Union, way beyond the borders of Ukraine. He would surely like Poland as well, and if he's allowed to continue invading sovereign nations, that is what will happen, and Donald Trump, tragically, is the one to do that. We've heard now from NATO member countries that they will be backing the sovereignty of Ukraine, whatever happens. And what does that do if Donald Trump decides to side with Vladimir Putin? Well, that creates an impasse between Europe and America. And I've recently started saying that if there was a war between NATO and Russia, I'm not entirely sure which side the United States would be on under the leadership of Donald Trump. Zelensky declared over the weekend Ukrainians will not give their land to occupiers, warning that surrendering territory would violate Ukraine's constitution and that any such agreement made without Ukraine's participation would be stillborn. And maybe Donald Trump has never been briefed on the Budapest Memorandum. Or maybe he was briefed, he just never read it. Signed in December 1994, it involved Ukraine, Russia, and the United States, and the United Kingdom. It provided security assurances to Ukraine in exchange for it giving up its nuclear weapons. Ukraine, Belarus, and Kazakhstan joined the treaty on the non-proliferation of nuclear weapons as non-nuclear weapon states. The memorandum included pledges from the signatory nations to respect Ukraine's sovereignty and borders. Or maybe Trump does know about that, but chooses to ignore it because it was Bill Clinton that signed it. Specifically, the memorandum included the following security assurances: respect for the independence and sovereignty and existing borders of Ukraine, refraining from the threat or use of force against the territorial integrity or political independence of Ukraine, and finally, seeking immediate United Nations Security Council action to provide assistance to Ukraine if it should become the victim of an act of aggression or an object of a threat of aggression in which nuclear weapons are used. The agreement was signed in Budapest, Hungary, following the dissolution of the Soviet Union and the subsequent decision by Ukraine to relinquish its nuclear arsenal. The United States, the United Kingdom, and Russia all signed the memorandum. France and China also provided individual assurances in separate documents. That is the reason why Donald Trump is on the wrong side of history. While Kiev remains firm in rejecting any formal renunciation of territory, there is growing acceptance amongst parts of the Ukrainian elite and public of a deal that could acknowledge Russia's de facto control for a set period in exchange for ending the fighting. The major sticking point is the lack of credible guarantees that Moscow would not exploit a ceasefire to rebuild its forces and attack again. Early-year discussions about a European peacekeeping force quickly shrank into a reassurance force positioned far from the front, leaving Ukraine reliant almost entirely on Putin's word, something history has shown to be unreliable. In the days leading up to Friday's summit, Zelensky and his aides have been rallying European partners around an alternative peace proposal, yet past experience suggests that Trump is either unwilling or unable to apply serious pressure on Vladimir Putin. And that is what makes this entire situation extremely unstable for world peace. I'm Anthony Davis. You can find me on the 5 Minute News YouTube channel and podcast, on Wednesdays co-hosting Uncovered, and on Sunday on The Weekend Show with Midas Touch.